Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Lifer. The parking lot was empty, except for dry weeds squeezing up through cracks in the asphalt, except for the deserted, rusting basketball hoop on one end, except for rustling leaves skittering across fading parking spaces in the gathering dusk, except for oil spots shimmering with rainbow colors after a recent sprinkling. The parking lot was empty, and because fate is resourceful, a steady, gloomy rain started falling, blurring any hope of discovering the mysterious body called in by an anonymous tip. What's in the corner by that dilapidated chain-link fence? My partner, Andy, asked. Looks like piles of garbage bags being buried by soggy leaves from here, I answered. I'll circle around for a closer look. I detect movement. Do dead bodies move? Nah, just rats crawling all over. Better get out and take a good look. Bummer the rain is getting worse and the wind is picking up, turning this into a chilly, miserable autumn evening. Not even a sliver of a moon. Why is that always the way when a body shows up? Andy complained. Can't we simply call the coroner's office to come claim the neatly wrapped package? They would love that and have our badges if it turned out to be nothing more than trash. We gotta confirm whatever it is. Sorry. Get your slicker on and take your flashlight. I'll be ready to call it in. I pulled the squad car up as close as I could as he prepared to exit. Suddenly, lightning flashed. Thunder pealed as a hail of bullets pounded the passenger side. Andy fell back inside his head, exploding and pouring gray matter all over me in the upholstery. Reacting instinctively, I spun out of the lot, laying new rubber on the old asphalt, and bumping over the crumbling center meridian, at the same time trying to figure from which gaping windows in the 4-story abandoned factory building the bullets were spewing. Cursing under my breath. F***ing prank call. How can this be happening? Collecting my scrambled wits, I squealed a UI about half a block away and paused on the side of the street, looking back at the front of the building. Like rats abandoning a sinking ship, perps were scurrying out of doors carrying backpacks and rolled-up bedding. They appeared homeless, but any of them were potential suspects, and they were all getting away along with the weapons while I was on the horn to Central. Like a crazy man possessed, I ground into gear and plowed ahead, showering taser rays from my weapon, aiming at legs to slow them down. So what if I hit a few with my bumper? We would need witnesses. Officer down, send armored SWAT, was all I remember shouting into the mic. I sped out of retaliation range and waited for backup, not knowing if any would be available. All I wanted to do was hold what was left of my friend and partner. An 18-year veteran of the force, he was already looking forward to retiring and spending more time with his beautiful wife, Jolene, and his teenaged sons, Andrew Jr. and Joshua. I remember watching those boys grow up. How am I ever going to face them? As the senior officer, I'm the one who was supposed to be protecting him. Instead, I delivered him into a hail of bullets. We let our guard down, dear boy. I don't have anyone waiting at home for me. Why couldn't it have been me with a new hole in the head? It can't even be an opened casket. No mortician can put the pieces back together. Bleak rain continued to fall into the chill autumn night, highlighted by blue and red strobing lights and streaking lightning punctuated by thunder. By the time the captain and lieutenant got there, I know I looked like a blubbering idiot, shivering and quaking. More squads and a special weapons van soon arrived. Don't go in there without armor and shields. I think it was a deliberate ambush set up to kill as many police as they could. Got a fake tip about a body being found, but we were supposed to deliver the bodies. I'd say the bullets were coming from the second and third floor broken windows, but so many people scrambled out of the building you may not find any evidence. Still, someone could be waiting to claim more victims. I put a few down out front. Gotta go find some more. Bet those defund the police activists are happy with this carnage. Force is already down to bare bones. Slim odds we'll be able to round up all of them. Easy, Cooper. Look at yourself. You hit it all. You've done all you're going to do tonight. Lieutenant Kramer and I will handle it from here. Someone will assess how you're doing while we assess the situation. Captain Crane commanded. Soon, ambulances were on the scene with emergency medical technicians attending to those witnesses I hit and myself. Bloody, headless Andy was scooped into a body bag, and our pockmarked unit was hauled in for evidence. Ignoring all my protesting, I was delivered to the hospital and examined for holes. Hard to determine what was me and what was pieces of Andy. Really, Doc, I'm still in one piece. Only need to clean the gore off. I'll be all right. You're shaking like a leaf ready to fall. When I'm done with you, I'll assign a trauma evaluator before you crash and burn. Losing a partner like that will have long-term effects if left unaddressed. Doctor's orders. Time off while you see a therapist. I'll have the support of all the guys in the precinct. I'm not sure about a shrink, but I promise you, I'm gonna be someone's worst nightmare once I get back on the street to find the monsters that riddled us. They don't understand what they've created. I'll never retire. I'm a lifer now. You can bet. Gonna rain long-term regrets down on them. A night out. It's 1:30 in the morning and the bass is hammering so hard I feel it beat in time with my heart. It could be my adrenaline. No one sees me. I'm invisible to them. I've always had the ability to make myself invisible. Most of my life was spent being invisible to others. It's a hell of a superpower right now. The lights are flashing and the beautiful bodies of strangers are grinding against each other to music. It's an odd mating ritual. I don't understand it. You get dressed up, made up, and go writhe against a stranger in the hopes of either getting laid or a prospect of getting laid at a later date. And maybe, just maybe, this night of painted-up grinding on a stranger will lead to a relationship. Isn't that how I got here, though? The bar is backlit, and the bottles glow with ephemeral promises of a good time. The floor is sticky, where hopeful patrons have bumped into each other or tried to maneuver around each other unsuccessfully. Hopes and dreams and promises all spilled out, laid bare, and left as a sticky residue on a dirty floor. I amble through the labyrinth of bodies attempting to make my way to the bathroom. I've been here before, to this club, not this situation, a million times before. Wealthy frat boys and the girls that hope to marry them and become trophy wives congregate here. Beautiful people living beautiful Instagram lives, worshiping at the altar of materialism and lust. I used to belong here. Not that I fall into either category of wealthy frat boy or gold digger. I fell in between, a guest by proximity. Being beautiful has its advantages. Yet, even being beautiful, standing out just enough to get the invite, I blend in and go unnoticed. Except by her. She noticed me. Everyone noticed her. Tonight, I'm anything but beautiful. I'm caked in dirt and blood, a backpack on my shoulder. It's dark, and everyone is so self-absorbed or so intent on the mission of hooking up that they don't see me. The bouncer was so busy flirting with a hopeful girl trying to get in that he didn't even see me slip past him and through the door. I know I'm leaving a trail of evidence behind me. flakes of dried blood and caked mud sloughing off with each step that I take. The vibration of the thrumming bass does nothing to help this. I'm careful to avoid the bar area where it is more lit up and I'm more prone to bump into someone and get noticed. But I'm invisible. I was invisible when I came in upon him tonight too. Her and him. He didn't see me coming. She did though. She always saw me. A group of gorgeous girls come tumbling out of the bathroom. The one in the middle rubs her nose and sniffles. It doesn't take a genius to know why. I move back into the shadows and avoid eye contact. They don't see me. I slip in and thank whichever gods that exist. The bathroom is blissfully empty. I throw the lock in place. Within seconds, someone is pounding on the door. It's ironic that this is where I ended up. It's where it started a year before. Her and I. Escaping into this bathroom, locking the door, her back against the wall. I throw my backpack on the floor and turn the faucet on. She fell in love with me. I fell harder. He never gave her up and refused to let her go. I began to remove my blood and mud-caked clothes. I take care to put them in the trash can, moving around the other garbage so that they slip to the bottom. He promised her that he would always own her. She would always be his. We took our concerns to the cops. They didn't care. They didn't listen. He never stopped. According to the cops, his feelings were just hurt. He's a good guy with a promising future. He would eventually stop, they said. But he didn't. He wouldn't. I pulled the trash bags from the stalls and put it on top of the pile of garbage, camouflaging my blood and dirt-covered clothes. I stick my head under the faucet and let the hot water run over my scalp and face. The way she touched my face or ran her fingers through my hair. The way she told me I was the most beautiful girl she's ever met. She saw me, really saw me. Being seen is a powerful drug. The mud and the blood rinse from my hair and face down the drain with my tears and with my hopes. This is not what I wanted to become. I didn't have a choice. He wouldn't stop. He wouldn't leave her alone. He wouldn't leave us be. I have to hurry and finish cleaning up before the last call. The hot water reminds me of the feeling of his hot blood on my hands. I didn't expect it to flow like that. Viscous and hot, and so much of it. There's more angry pounding on the door, shouting. I need to move faster. My eyes look dead. I watched his eyes as he died, as the light went out. I slick my hair back into a tight knot, reminiscent of an old Robert Palmer video. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. It was iconic a million years ago. I've always loved the classics. So much more raw than today's auto-tuned bullshit. She loved to listen to the classics with me, laugh at the videos as we streamed them on our television. I add my heavy black eye makeup and dark burgundy lipstick. It looks dramatic against the paleness of my face. His face went pale as his eyes went dark and his blood drained so fast. I pull out a thin black tank top and black pants and throw them on. I rub the dirt and blood off of my chunky Doc Martens and throw on my necklaces. I look once more at my hands. Hands that just killed a man and dragged his body to a river and dumped him like trash, and make sure to clear any remaining residue from underneath my nails. He shouldn't have tried to do what he was about to do. Not to her. I wouldn't let that happen. He had to know I wouldn't let that happen. He had a death wish. The pounding on the door is getting more intense. I take a wet paper towel and clean up the flakes of mud and blood that fell around me as I cleaned myself up. I double-check that my clothes that I shed cannot be seen in the trash can. I check the sink. I check my makeup. Flawless. I open the door and make my way back through the crowd of angry girls who were made to wait. And she's there, waiting for me, against the bar, just like the first night where it all began. She watched me kill a man, and she is still here for me. She still loves me, because she knows I did it all for her, and I would do it again. The lights come on, letting everyone know it's time to go home. I notice that eyes fall on us, see us, as they adjust to the bright light. The music cuts off. The party is over. She takes my hand, and we make our way out in the crowd. No one will ever know, except for her and I, dressed for ruin. On a sticky Saturday evening in downtown Philadelphia, the line for Evie's Eden wrapped around the block. Blaring, fast-tempo music and strobing neon invaded the detectives' senses as they pushed their way through a throng of warm, gyrating bodies to take a seat at the bar. The stench of sweat and stale beer permeated the dark room, and the rush of frigid air from the vents above offered minimal relief from the stifling heat. The officers shouted to make themselves heard over the din, while several people almost knocked the men from their seats in their drunken attempt to squeeze between them and get the bartender's attention. The younger of the two men, a clean-shaven blonde with neatly combed hair and stern hazel eyes, tugged at his tie and scowled at a group of scantily clad women with neon-painted bodies as they approached him. They gave him sour looks and a few rude gestures in return before scampering off to find a more willing recipient of their affections. His partner looked down on most of the room at almost 6 feet. Gray streaked through his dark, purposely disheveled hair, and there was a hard glint in his cobalt eyes. His broad shoulders and well-built barrel chest, along with the faint scars littering his arms, made Vincent look less approachable than the blonde detective. The illusion was broken by the deep laugh lines etched into his cheeks as he chuckled and teased his dour partner. You didn't have to scowl at them like that. The poor girls were just being friendly. The blonde scoffed, rolling his eyes as he said, I'm not interested in their kind of friendship. Besides, we're here to work, not socialize, remember? Speaking of, should we really be consorting with criminals to solve cases? Vincent ordered a Corona and lime from a bartender even taller than him, with bubblegum pink and deep purple hair, styled in a short mohawk. He accepted the drink with a charming grin and left a generous tip before facing his partner, ignoring his disapproving glare. Criminals make the best informants. This one has helped us with a lot of cases. Her information network is invaluable. The younger detective grit his teeth, holding back an argument. No matter his feelings, the boy had to accept that their case had gone from nearly solved to stone cold in less than 24 hours. They needed whatever help they could get. Vincent's partner tugged at his tie. Sweat rolled down the boy's neck and stained his collar. He had tried to convince him to change out of his uniform, but was unsurprised when he refused. He wondered if the stubborn boy regretted it now with the sweltering heat pressing in on them. Vincent downed his drink and ordered another while his partner gave in, removing his tie and unbuttoning the top 2 buttons. The young detective barked another question before Vincent could comment. Where is this informant then? Every minute we waste here is another our suspect has to flee the country. Oh, I don't think we have to worry about that. She should be here there she is. They turned their attention to the top of a metal staircase at the back of the club. Vincent's throat felt dry despite the 2 drinks he'd already finished as he watched his old friend step through the VIP entrance. She gave her white suede jacket to the doorman with an alluring smile, then turned to face the officers as she descended the stairs. Diamond-studded gold stilettos clicked against the metal as she went. Her strapless, midnight pantsuit with a plunging neckline swayed around her ankles and long legs, but cinched tightly at her waist to accentuate wide hips and hug her chest. The fabric shimmered under the strobing neon lights, and the diamond choker that cascaded down her throat like a waterfall and nestled between her breasts flashed brightly. Smooth olive-toned skin contrasted the gleaming jewels perfectly. Bright copper ringlets spilled partially over one shoulder. The rest pulled back with a clip to show off the shaved right side of her head. Russet painted lips with a prominent cupid's bow, dark thick lashes, and a chocolate smoky eye highlighted her high cheekbones and bright electric blue eyes. Vincent turned to face his partner as he scoffed and said, "You're joking." "Nope." "Detective, I'd like you to meet Evelyn Ross." "Evelyn, this is my new partner, Connor Williams." Connor was so distracted by her appearance that he hadn't realized she was walking right toward them. Evelyn smiled coyly and extended an intricately manicured hand. Tiny rhinestones were arranged in a rose design on every other stiletto-shaped nail, which were painted to match her eyes. Her breathy tone was deeper than Vincent remembered and laced with expertly veiled sarcasm. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Detective." Reluctantly taking her proffered hand, Connor forced an awkward smile and said, "Likewise." Her lips twitched with amusement as she dropped his hand, then turned to speak to Vincent with something akin to fondness. "Join me for a drink?" "Of course." Evelyn lifted a panel and moved behind the bar towards a burgundy-painted steel door. Vincent 2 steps behind her. Connor followed, but the senior detective shook his head and said, "Wait here. Get a drink or something. I won't be long." Then, before Connor had a chance to question him, Vincent followed the gang leader through the door. As the steel door to Evelyn's office closed behind him with a click, a chill washed over Vincent's face and arms, leaving goosebumps in its wake. A faint aroma of vanilla and dark cherries replaced the reek of sweat. Vincent's stiff shoulders relaxed at the familiar scent. 4 sleek leather armchairs surrounded a mahogany card table, and a personal bar stood in the far left corner. An ashtray made of cobalt glass sat on the table, clean and empty of any remnants. Vincent's fingers itched for the smokes tucked in his breast pocket. A single painting of a man and 2 women performing around a piano hung on the wall opposite him. It had hung there since the day it went missing from a museum in Boston some 30 years ago, when he was barely a thought. Evelyn's office was quiet, except for the clinking of glass as she poured them drinks. The reinforced concrete walls, painted evergreen, blocked out all trace of music or chatter from the club. Vincent sunk into the cool, smooth leather, stifling a sigh. Evelyn sauntered over to the table, sitting on top directly in front of him and crossing her legs before handing him his glass. Vincent enjoyed the bitterness of the bourbon as it washed over his tongue and slid down his throat. She always did have the best taste in liquor. Vincent watched his old friend curiously as she set the glass aside and leaned close to pull 2 camel blue 100s and a lighter from his front pocket. Her lips just shy of grazing his stubbled cheek, and the heady aroma of vanilla and dark cherries briefly overwhelmed him. Electric blue eyes dancing with mirth bore into his as she slipped the cig between his teeth and lit it for him. Then, a rush of clarity and disappointment hit hard as she sat back to light her own. Curls of white smoke drifted from her lips and slowly filled the room. She stared him down with a raised brow until the cigarette had burnt down almost to the filter. Then she said, "So, you going to tell me what you want?" He raised his own brows and grinned teasingly as he answered, "Can't I just come to see an old friend?" Her unimpressed stare pulled a snort of laughter from his lips. She held her hand out expectantly and retorted, Not when you have your dog waiting outside. Vincent relented with a sigh and pulled a file from inside his jacket, which she snapped from his fingers and threw open on the table next to her. The detective lowered his leg from the table and leaned forward to look over its contents, which she was flipping through with a carefully placid expression. The faces of 15 young women stared up at him, all of whom had gone missing within the last 6 months. The final photograph in the file was a mugshot of a man with beady gray eyes, greasy black hair, a pudgy face, and a sad, wispy little mustache. Vincent watched Evelyn's face carefully as her bright eyes paused on his picture, looking for any sign of recognition. If she did know the man, she wasn't giving it away, so he decided to probe her a little. He's our main suspect. Goes by the name Rob, full name Robert Carroll. We've been tracking him down for a month, even got a hit on his hideout. Then we go in for the raid last night, and he's gone without a trace, so now we've hit a dead end. Do you recognize him? Evelyn placed the picture back in the file, closed it, and took a generous sip from her drink before answering with a carefully even tone. Afraid not, should I? Vincent kept his own tone light as he pushed a little more. Well, our files say he was one of your men until about a year ago. You've made it a point to know the names of everyone who works for you, haven't you? The stare she pinned him with was bitterly cold, and her breathy voice took on a dangerous edge. My organization doesn't deal in sex trafficking, a fact of which I know you're quite aware. Yes, I'm also very aware of how you've punished those who have gone behind your back in the past, which is why I thought you might be able to help me find my suddenly missing suspect. The way her lips curled into a cruel sneer and her face turned away confirmed his suspicions that she was involved in Robert's disappearance. He sighed as he put out his cigarette, stood, and placed his arms on either side of Evelyn's hips, caging her in. She met his gaze with pursed lips as he asked, "Where is he, Evie?" The brazen woman leaned forward, trailing her sharp nails down the side of his jaw and over his chest. The coy smirk was back as she goaded him. "If I did know where he is, why should I hand him over to you? My men are mine to punish. That's the deal we made, remember? This isn't some petty drug dealer who stole from you. This man is responsible for the disappearance of 15 women that we know of. Who knows how many are still alive? Their families deserve justice." Evie rolls her eyes and scoffs at his appeal to her better nature. "Oh yes, sitting comfortably in a jail cell watching TV and getting 3 meals a day sounds like justice to me. Those families deserve to see him strung up and castrated. Try again." Vincent muttered a curse under his breath. If it were anyone else, he would just get a warrant, but Evelyn had become untouchable in the last few years. She had half the department, the mayor, even their state senator in her pocket. No one would dare sign a warrant against her, and she'd never take a threat from him seriously anyway. Time to change tactics. He wove his left hand into her ginger curls, running calloused fingers down the back of her neck. She tensed at the contact and repressed a shiver, but the goosebumps erupting over her arms and the excitement in her eyes gave her away. Encouraged, Vincent pressed his forehead against hers and whispered, "For me, then, as a favor to an old friend?" Her nails grazed his cheek again as she glowered. "Right. A friend who only comes to see me when he wants something. I feel a little used. Maybe you could give me something in exchange for my kindness." "What do you want?" He could guess the answer, had known her long enough to read the cues. In their previous meetings, she had always treated him like he was just another business partner, careful to keep her distance, giving no hint toward their long-standing and complicated friendship. Her forwardness now was telling, but he wanted her to say it. A selfish part of him needed her to admit that she had missed their closeness. Evie pushed him back into the chair, placing her knees on either side of his and pulling herself close. Her hand left his cheek, burying itself into his messy dark locks, gripping tight. Evelyn's electric blue eyes bore into his as she said, "Don't play dumb, Vince. It doesn't suit you, and I'm not in the mood for any more games." It was as much of an admission as he was going to get, and Vincent gave in with a groan as he pulled her lips to his in a bruising kiss, one that she returned with just as much vigor. Sometime later, Vincent watched with hazy satisfaction as the cobalt lace of Evie's lingerie disappeared back underneath her shimmering silk outfit. When Evie faced him with an equally sated look, he took a moment to appreciate her swollen, though still perfectly painted lips. Her hair, which he had torn from its clip, cascaded over her shoulders in a wild tangle of curls that made her look deceptively innocent. One could almost mistake her for a normal woman like this, instead of a dangerous crime boss. He wondered how many others had been permitted to see her that way, and scolded himself for hoping he was the only one. Vincent gave up that chance a long time ago, the day he swore his oath and joined the police force. Even this small indulgence was one he shouldn't have allowed himself. Once they finished straightening themselves, the pair looked at each other. Vincent lamented the return of Evelyn's closed-off expression that had been so open and vulnerable under his touch just a few minutes ago. But their time was up, and he came here for a reason. He struggled to keep the regret out of his tone as he asked, "So, where can I find Mr. Carroll?" Evelyn grinned playfully, hips swaying as she walked over to the bar, picked up a cell phone, and hit one of the speed dial numbers. After a few moments, the call picked up. Her orders were curt. "Bring him in." A side door that Vincent swore was a wall before opened, and a beat-up, barely conscious man who matched Rob's description to a T was shoved through by two bulky, suited thugs. Rob, with hands tied in front of him, collapsed to his knees. The thugs backed out without a word, and the door shut behind them, leaving nothing but smooth wall in its place. Evelyn laughed at his incredulous glare and said, "He's all yours, detective." Vincent rolled his eyes and strode over to the quickly fading man, tossing a sarcastic remark over his shoulder as he yanked the suspect up. "If you were going to hand him over anyway, why bother making such a fuss?" She giggled and walked over to open the burgundy door for him. He could already see his younger partner's expression morphing from annoyance to surprise and disbelief. Evie's breath at his ear sent a tingle down his spine. "Well, I thought he would make a good gift, but I wanted something too. Don't pretend you didn't enjoy it." He glanced to the right to meet her roguish grin as she continued, "Happy birthday." Connor took the unconscious trafficker off his hands, so Vincent turned back to Evie, who stood in the doorway with arms crossed, looking way too pleased with herself. He had forgotten that his birthday was tomorrow, and that it was something he and Evie shared. Vincent chuckled wryly and carded a scarred hand through his hair as he thanked her. Then he helped Connor drag their suspect out to the car, tossed him in the back, and settled into the driver's seat. From the corner of his eye, he saw his partner open his mouth, most likely to barrage him with questions. "Don't ask. It's complicated. But now you see what I was saying about Evelyn being one of our best informants. This isn't the first time she's handed our guy right to us, and it probably won't be the last." Connor didn't press for more information. He faced front with a thoughtful, almost conflicted look, and the ride to the station passed in silence, a silence that Vincent spent thinking of her, of their bodies pressed together, and foolishly wishing that he could do it again, sipping tea with a pretty monster. Mothers keep secrets from their families for good reasons. Jody's mom, for example, sleeps around. Amanda's mom snorts a little coke. The worst thing I can say about my mom is that she smokes. But all that changed today when I came home from college earlier than planned. Home. The place where Mom ruled. The woman who gave me unending advice on how to keep things looking good down there. The woman who overshared intimate details of her personal life with me. It was nearly midnight when I unlocked the door, hoping Mom was in bed so I could do the same. Unfortunately, she was up. In the living room, nude, save for a pair of hooker heels, strangling someone with pantyhose. College, for all its good points, did not prepare me for this. There was no curricular path to take that dealt with mothers in the act of killing someone while wearing no clothes, so I just stood there and watched the victim struggle before going limp. "Hello, dear. You're home early." Mom smiled the smile that garnered her an obscene amount of money on the public speaking circuit. If she was nonplussed, I missed it. "What the fuck, Mom?" My university vocabulary deserted me at the moment. "I'll get dressed and make us a nice cup of tea, dear. And don't be vulgar." I didn't want tea, but I got it anyway. Black tea. Strong enough to float a horseshoe on. Sweet enough to send me into diabetic shock. Mom thought tea was a cure for all ills, especially when delivering bad news. When she and Dad decided to get divorced, the news came with tea. I had no idea how to start this conversation. What I did was glare at her until she spoke. It had to be done. Mom reported this as if murder were a necessary evil, like dealing with periods, shopping with your mom, or figuring out the right bra to buy for the senior prom. Who was he? This wasn't what I really wanted to know, but I was afraid to ask her what the dead woman's sins were. She. Mom sipped her tea and nibbled on a Girl Scout cookie. Trefoils. It took me a moment to digest this little nugget of information. Since the person had a bag over their head and was fully dressed, I think I can be excused for not knowing the gender of the dead person. "Okay, Mom, let me get this straight. You were nude and you strangled a woman to death." Well, I had to get her here first, so I honey trapped her." "What's that?" "A honey trap? Using sexual promises to lure someone to a place where you can do what you want to do to them." "But..." My voice trailed off, unsure of how I wanted to object to Mom's behavior. Mom stood up. "While you're busy trying to construct a complete sentence, I'll just nip out and load the body in the car. I have a date with a band saw that simply won't wait." I drank the tea. It helped. I fell asleep waiting for Mom to return from her errands. I refused to think about the incident since it involved some sort of saw, so I popped one of her sleeping pills and crashed. It was afternoon when I woke up. The events of the night seemed like a horrible dream, but I had evidence that it happened. Mom's slut heels were still in the living room, reposing innocently under the coffee table. "Good afternoon, sunshine. Tea?" I could write a treatise on how I didn't want tea, but I would get it anyway. "Tell me." I hoped the first two words I uttered today would be sufficient for the day. They weren't. "Sweetie, do you remember Uncle Zach?" "Barely." I sipped the tea. Mom's tea should be weaponized by the Pentagon. "Well, he was fond of you and your female cousins. Too fond, if you get my meaning." I stared at her, puzzled. "So fond," she continued, "that he would often put his hands in inappropriate places." Okay, I don't remember that. He used to give me a box of chocolates and a stuffed animal when he visited. And that's as far as he would get with you, dear. So, I did what any right-thinking mother would do in this situation. I killed him. I asked for another cup of tea with extra sugar. How? God, I had so many other questions about the matter, but my brain wouldn't allow them to get to my mouth. Stupid, stupid brain, she explained. Sliced the carotid, dumped him into the bayou. Watched the alligators spin him to the bottom. I don't know if he died from my wound or from drowning by alligator. Did you know? Mom paused to take a sip of tea. That alligators bury their food and let it rot for a bit before eating it? No, Mom, I didn't know that, I said matter-of-factly. Mom sighed. Anyway, that started me thinking, what am I doing with my life? Sure, I'm making tons of money and I have a beautiful daughter, but is that enough? Don't I owe it to the world to get rid of as many bad people as possible? The mother-daughter relationship throughout history is fraught with differing opinions, tastes, and morals. I expected to argue with my mom over things, but this wasn't a discussion I ever expected to have. By killing people? Bad people, Mom said, correcting me, raising her right forefinger in the air. We have laws, Mom. The problem being, sweetie, that the law enforcement authorities always act after the fact. They come to the rescue after the person is dead, raped, or otherwise victimized. And then, well what? How successful are they? She had a point. Which brings me to this. I leaned forward and stared at my mom. You seduced a woman? Mom smiled a smile that would make Dracula have second thoughts. Yes, I'm very good at seduction. Mom, I'm pretty. I still have my figure and a certain coquettish mannerism that others are drawn to. Fuck, don't be vulgar, dear. We sat in silence for a few minutes. It was an uncomfortable silence on my part, but Mom seemed to enjoy it. She flipped through a fashion catalog, clucking her tongue at some of the modern attire. But that's Mom. Old-fashioned about fashion, but quite liberal when it comes to liberating the living from breathing. You have something to tell me? I sat up, stunned. Given the recent events, the news I had for her had been forgotten. The momentous revelation now seemed picayune. I did, but I think your actions have eclipsed my news. Mom grinned. I see that the expensive education is paying off. How many people have you killed, Mom? I was loath to share my information right now. It didn't seem like the right time, what with my mom's confessions. And I know what you're thinking. How many people has she sent to the grave? I don't think I want to know because the number, I'm sure, is big. And I'll tell you why I think this. My mom is crazy. Two things were revealed in the next 10 minutes. One, Mom had, thus far, killed 37 people. I say thus far because she's not a woman to give up on her dreams. Two, she already knew I was gay. How did you know? As good as it felt to not be censured by a parent for one's sexual proclivities, it was still a bombshell. You wore a lot of plaid in high school. My mom took my hand across the table. Dear, no woman looks good in plaid. That's it? Heavens no. You listened to a lot of Bikini Kill and L7. So what? And you slept with Jody in your room many, many nights. Yeah, okay. Girls do that. Nude? She got me there. I spent the rest of the day avoiding Mom. By that, I mean that I went out, had a few drinks, and I may or may not have kissed a couple of women. It's kind of a blur, which is what I was hoping for. When I got up the next day, Mom was gone. In typical style, she left me a note that said everything and explained nothing. Be back next week, sweetie. I hope you still adore your mother, despite what you perceive as her faults. As for me, I'm proud my daughter has the courage to accept who she is. There is a nice mushroom and onion galette in the fridge, and a rather nice bottle of Pinot from Oregon. Much better than the California Pinot, don't you think? I spent the week wrestling with the issue. Seriously, how does one deal with a homicidal mother? I could turn her in, but that comes with a whole new set of problems that I didn't want to deal with. I could ask her to stop, but I bet my K.D. Lang album collection that she wouldn't. I could help her, but the thought turned my stomach. Or I could just accept my mom the way she is. Easier said than done. I'm famished, dear. Care to grab lunch? Mom had been back 5 minutes, and as far as I can tell, she took several hits of speed on the flight home. Since I was in the process of trying to accept my mom as she was, I accepted the invitation. Maybe being around her more would ease my unease, settle my unsettled mind. The local pastry shop was her choice, oddly enough. I say oddly enough because she always complained about the line servers. They have the best tea, sweetie, and a kouign-amann that simply sends one's tongue to nirvana. I'll order 2 for us, along with a pot of tea. What I wanted was a Coke and a Danish. Sure thing, Mom. The line wasn't long, so we zipped through, laden with our treasures. Mom picked a spot against the wall, just in case a miscreant came in and started a brouhaha. Mom had a strategy for everything, and a gun. You just want to shoot somebody, don't you? Sarcasm isn't my usual mode of interacting with my mom. Desperate pleading was my game. Not until I finished my tea and pastry. Mom graced me with another crocodile smile. Nice. Very cultured. The girls behind the counter are extra surly today, dear. They're always a little ungracious, though. Is that why you told them to smile more and to ponder their assuredly bleak futures less? Obviously, Mom said, after swallowing her pastry and taking a sip of tea. She would never speak with food in her mouth. Hell, she wouldn't even nod with food in her mouth. My mom was a motivational speaker who had written 2 bestsellers, A Heaping Helping of Self-Help and A Second Helping of Self-Help. I never understood why people shelled out big bucks for her books and even more money to attend one of her speaking events. Her advice was pablum, her sayings trite. Because of this, though, she felt it was her right, no, her obligation, to offer advice to all and sundry. Poisoning would be too good for them. Don't be flip, dear. Or electrocution. We could call it the juice of justice. Okay, Mom was going to play the game, outdo me with sarcasm. I gave it up. Why did you kill the woman in the living room? I had avoided this question. A cold hand squeezed my heart. A dark dread that the answer would confirm my mom as an irredeemable monster enveloped me. She profited from charities raising money for sick kids. Quite clever, actually. She ran the funds through several shell corporations, but in the end, the money ended up in an account in Barbados. And I persuaded her to transfer the ill-gotten gains to the proper charities. Persuaded? You would be amazed at what one can do with a lit cigarette and a serrated knife. God, Mom. More tea, dear? The myriad philosophers that I had read didn't help. The addition by subtraction philosophy that Mom purported as rationalization for her murderous ways didn't help. All I could think of was that the hands that soothed me as a youngster now wielded knives and cigarettes. I finally concluded that Mom's ways were another expression of love, a new and, to her, improved way to do what she could for her fellow humans before the long sleep. As for me, I'll take a more traditional approach and avoid murdering people, and I told my mom this. Never say never, dear. Mom's advice on things came with platitudes. I'll never stop loving you, Mom. She smiled, nodding her head at my cleverness. You mean you'll always love me? Shut up, Mom. Okay, dear, but come, give your mother a hug. Put out the cigarette first. Because she loved me. She put out the cigarette, better fires. Dear Jay, I lit the mailbox on fire when I saw you kissing Em. Others told me that when feeling too much, one might hurt oneself. There might be cuts along the arm or starvation. I had no inclination towards self-harm. From a very young age, I understood that the world does enough to you. Why do any more to yourself? I saw you kissing M behind the cafetorium, and I ran all 7 blocks home. On the way, I saw the Gozer's blue mailbox, and I knew it had to burn. One match around the base, and it went up quickly along with whatever mail was inside of it. The red flag was up, and I did it anyway. Later that night, I attended a slumber party and started the rumor that you had done it, that I often saw you lighting ants on fire with a magnifying glass as though that was a natural origin for someone who would eventually begin setting better fires. Some of the girls believed me. Some didn't care. One told me that you kissed her after her shift at Pizza Grace, and your mouth tasted like a fountain drink. I watched her after she fell asleep. I visualized her waking up to find her hair on fire, but I didn't do it. I didn't want to hurt anyone, not even you. When I asked you to the dance, you told me that you'd already agreed to go with G, even though that was a lie. I knew it was a lie, because I knew enough about you by then. When you lied, your left eyebrow would twitch. Maybe it still does. Do you still lie? Would you tell me if you did? I told you that I understood and wished you well. I knew that you were going to ask G as soon as I was out of sight. Then, if you changed your mind, you'd simply pick someone else to bring. What you were never going to do is show up with me. Not me. The girl who had to wear baggy tops to hide how much she developed between sophomore and junior year. Not me. The know-it-all who the teachers had stopped calling on, because she always knew the path Napoleon took on his first campaign and the first 15 numbers of pi. I don't think intelligence was a turnoff for you. On the contrary, I think you wanted me to be smarter. You wanted me to be so smart that kissing me would be like allowing dark matter down your throat to rip you apart from the inside. You held me to a different standard. I'm sorry, Jay. I didn't know that's what was going on. I thought you just wanted to kiss the prettiest girls in the school. I never investigated what your deeper motives might have been. The day you told me you couldn't take me to the cotton candy dance, I went to the greeting card store in town and set fire to all the Get Well cards. They were at the back of the store, and there was only one cashier working. I made quite a pile, struck the match, and walked right out. By the time the smoke alarm went off, I was already watching from down the street. Lucky for me, greeting card establishments don't have security cameras. I went to a pool party the following weekend and told everyone there that you'd confessed to me a year ago that you hated greeting cards. Seeds were planted. A freshman who was at the party told me that you'd been putting removable tattoos in her locker. Hearts with knives in them, and mermaids who refused to smile. She pulled down her bathing suit bottom and showed me where she'd placed one of the tattoos. It looked like Joan of Arc tied up and suffering her great punishment. "I think you're right," she whispered to me in between bites of a burnt hamburger. "I think he might be obsessed with fires. Why else would he give me this? The world will give you all the answers you want if you know exactly how to phrase the questions. On the way home from the pool party that day, I saw you in your front yard, mowing the lawn without a shirt on. I waved to you, and you waved back. You flexed for me, and then laughed. I saw a clean line of sweat going down your back to the gray t-shirt that was tucked into your red shorts. I wanted to cover myself in grass and let you run over me. It took me a moment to realize that my hand was still raised in a frozen greeting. You had stopped my time. You'd put me in a deep freeze. Only one thing could dissolve it. The day before graduation, I burned down the school. Part of me knew that eventually it would come to that. I'd used my allowance every week to buy kerosene, matches, bottles, rags, and any other accelerant I could find. The man at the hardware store questioned me about it early on, but I told him that teenage girls were using these types of things to help with our hormones. He seemed perplexed, but no man over 40 wants to know why teenage girls are doing any of the things they do. The next time I came in, he'd set aside some paint thinner for me. It was on sale, 2 for 1. That's what I used in the second-floor bathrooms. There was no commencement that year, no caps, no gowns. The only thing thrown up in the air was the spray of a fireman's hose. Students gathered around the periphery of the school. Some cried. I held my homeroom teacher as she asked why anyone would do something like this. I knew that the two of you were writing inappropriate notes to each other between periods. She must have justified it by telling herself that you were mature for your age. And maybe she was right. I try not to condemn anyone if I can help it. The worst condemnation of all has already occurred. The day of the school fire was also the day of the harvest. Everything I'd put into the ground was ready to be reaped. Rumors about your love of starting fires were too widespread to ignore, even though, in many ways, you were the town's favorite son. Your father had been the star linebacker for the football team back when he was in school. Your mother was valedictorian. You were going to do great things, and you were going to go far. And you were going to kiss every girl you wanted to kiss, and never give me more than a wave or a flex of your muscles only to laugh at me for staring. All of that got burned up and turned to rubbish. You went to jail for the very first time. When you got out, you couldn't find a job. Your parents disowned you. You couldn't even find a woman gullible enough to take you in, because by then, you reeked of smoke. Soon, you were dealing drugs and holding up food marts and gas stations. I lost track of how often you were in and out of prison, but I know you're there now, and I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry for the part I played. I'm sorry for every match I struck. I'm sorry you didn't see that I could have learned more. I could have caught on faster. I could have bloomed had you only allowed me some light. When you get out, I plan to be waiting for you. I'll pick you up and you can come stay with me. You can mow my lawn. You don't have to give me anything, just the respect I was owed back when we were children. Back when you thought a little cold water would put me out. You never knew that I was electric, did you, Jay? You never tasted my grease. You never thought to smother me. A little cold water. What was that going to do? I'll be standing at the gates when they release you. I'll bring the cigarettes you like. I'll light the first one. Then, I want a kiss. A nice, long kiss. I want to taste the emission. I want you to fill me up with smoke until I feel as though I'm never going to breathe again. You have no idea what you are getting into. I am no saint, but no one really is. Some people are less evil, some people are more evil. I have done things I am not proud of and will have to live with the consequences once they come. I do, however, refuse to feel guilt for what I have done. There are reasons behind my actions, and no one will convince me they are not for the greater good. I am writing here in my diary to be able to get it off my chest, as I cannot speak to anyone about it. I wish I could scream it from the top of my lungs, but I can't. If the secret comes out, it probably will be huge. The local media are already talking about it, and when they catch whoever did it, it will be loud. In my mind, I am a hero, but in people's eyes, I will not be. If anyone is reading this, probably after I have been caught, know this. I refuse to feel bad about it. I meant what I did every time. My heart is pounding with excitement, but I close my notebook and rest my head on the wall behind me. I've been doing my assignments for over a year already, but even thinking about them makes my heart race. It gives me rush, flushes my cheeks, and keeps me motivated to keep going. I love everything about it. I look at the time on my watch and get off the bed. Time for my double shift at the bar. I put on one of my tightest blouses with low cleavage, comfortable jeans, and tie my hair in half up, half down style. Touch of lipstick, mascara, shoes, and I am ready to go. As I walk out of the house, I feel the cold breeze tickle my skin and I shiver. I hate cold. As fast as I can, I lock the door and rush to the car. When I arrive at the bar, there are quite a few customers in already, even though it is only 5 p.m. I drop my bag off at my locker and wash my hands before I walk out to the main room. The music isn't very loud yet, thankfully. The outside daylight is still shining through, ruining the night out vibe, and people are divided between drinking coffees or beers. No spirits in their hands just yet. I make small talk with the colleague I'm taking over from before they leave, and I make my way to the right side of the bar to check if all fruits and garnishes are restocked and ready for the night. For those who never worked at a bar, they never are after a day shift. I slice lemons and oranges, moving on to the limes, when I hear the sound of a metal knocking gently on the polished wooden bar. I look up and immediately smile. My partner in crime is here. She is the most gorgeous woman I have ever met. Has long, curly black hair, bright blue eyes, and a smile I could not stop thinking about. I pour her a whiskey on the rocks and without a word, let her casually look around for the first 10 minutes. "Is your cockroach here already?" I ask, and she shakes her head. "I don't expect him here so early," she replies with a soft sigh. "Besides, I wanted to give you some attention before I see him." I smile and roll my eyes. "Lizzie, keep your flirting skills for the boys. I know what a sneaky little snake you are." She laughs at my joke, but doesn't reply. "How did you meet this one?" She grabs her glass and swirls it around, watching the almost melted ice cubes float in circles. "I accidentally bumped into him at the grocery store, very conveniently wearing one of my cutest dresses. We have been chatting on my fake phone for a week now. And he is definitely the one that did it?" I almost whisper, leaning closer towards her face. "Yes, Polly. He did do all of those unspeakable things to that girl a year ago." She whispers back, and I can smell the whiskey coming from her breath. Then his rich daddy hired a lawyer, paid off some of the important people, and the cockroach is enjoying his life. She puts the glass down and straightens back in her chair. Not for long, though. We make small talk as the time goes, in between me serving customers until about 6 p.m. when the cockroach walks in. He is a tall man with brown, messy hair, sharp jawline, and dressed nicely in some expensive clothes. I can't tell you what brand they are because I know nothing about it, but the way he wears them with cockiness, I can tell he spent money. His dad's money, I remind myself, and continue wiping the already clean bar, trying to make myself look busy. Liz gets up from her chair, greets him with a kiss on the cheek, and sits back down in front of me. They order a round of drinks, and she starts to work her magic. They spend hours on chatting and laughing, although I know Liz is faking it. She always does. When the clock strikes 9 p.m. and her date is pretty tipsy, they order the next round of drinks. I make them and turn my back to the camera to grab the lemon off the cutting board, with the pill between it and my finger, and I drop it in his drink. When he starts talking incoherently, Liz grabs his arm and quietly walks him out of the bar. I wait a few minutes before I ask my colleague to look after the bar, as I need a quick break, and leave as well. I find them in a back alley, the cockroach sitting sloppily on the floor, resting his back and head on the wall, and Liz standing above him, looking at her phone. As soon as I walk up to them, she looks up. I spoke to his victim. The girl was still so upset about what happened. She whispers, with anger in her eyes, "This piece of... He took something away from her she will never get back. He deserves what is coming his way." I don't reply, but nod in agreement. I look at the guy's face and feel disgusted that he not only felt it was okay to do what he did, but also decided consequences are not for him to handle. My stomach feels tight, something heavy like rocks growing inside it. I am not sure if it is from nerves, stress, disgust, or excitement from what is coming. It is Liz's time to deal with the man, and I need to get back to work soon enough. I help her tie his hands and feet, put him in the boot of the rented car, and turn to Liz. "He should have admitted and faced the punishment," I hear Liz say, and she slowly walks towards the driver's door. She isn't looking at me, and I am not sure if she is talking to herself or me. He is a gross, creepy cockroach who has done something horrible, and he needs to pay. The smug smile he had on his face when the case was dismissed, knowing he got away with it. I see her shake her head in the streetlight falling on her from above. Well, he didn't. They don't anymore. I whisper back and walk into the bar. HIM. I can feel the headache getting worse as the shouts don't end. Mr. Robertson came to report his son's missing, but ever since we took all the information and said we will look into it, he has been shouting at various officers. He wanted the whole station up at this moment and searching for his son. We tried explaining to him that we will not be able to find him within the next hour, so when he kept shouting, we threw him out, threatening with a ticket. I spin around in my chair to look at the cork board again, but feel hopeless. Missing men keep being added to it, but no more clues have been discovered. I feel like a complete idiot. Ryder Robertson's picture have now been added to the right side of the board, alongside Henry's, Lewis's, Christian's, and Jake's. All of these men, various ages, occupations, and lives, have been missing, and it was my job to find them. I hear someone walking up to my desk, and I turn to see my partner Jesse. "I could put an egg on your head and would be able to fry it within a minute," he says and smiles at his joke, but I don't smile back. I am too tense. Hey, I know it is hard, but with a new victim, there is a possibility for potential clues. I nod without saying anything and turn back to the board. Maybe walk me through what connects these men. Sometimes speaking things out loud helps to see things that could have been missed. I sigh but agree, for the sake of not having any other ideas. Henry, aged 54, went missing in April 2023. In February 2023, he was found not guilty for domestic violence on his wife. Lewis, aged 22, missing in July 2023. There was an old report to the police about attacking his ex-girlfriend, but she came back to retract the report, saying they just argued and she was okay. Chris went missing only a week after Lewis. They are the same age. I don't, however, have anything that links him to the rest of the guys, so maybe he is not part of it. Jake, aged 32, went missing in December 2023, only 3 months after his lawyer argued that 5 women that came forward from his company about inappropriate behavior towards them were unstable emotionally and had a vendetta against him. So the case was dismissed. And now, we have Ryder, who a year ago assaulted a girl, but somehow the DNA samples the doctors collected disappeared right before the trial. All of them have been seen with a woman at a bar the night before they went missing. So, the only thing that connects these men are vile actions against women. What if the women did it? I laugh and roll my eyes. Yes, because the experienced detective didn't think of that. I will check with the girl from Ryder's case, but all others have rockstone alibis. I pinch the bridge of my nose with my fingers and rub it, trying to get rid of the headache. Soon enough, this case will be assigned to someone else, since I can't seem to get any leads. And this would be an absolute nightmare for a young, ambitious detective like me. I needed to get at least something to keep me going. I think you need a drink, Jesse says, and I look at him from under my eyebrows. When we're done tonight, we are going out. And, he says quickly, raising his finger to stop me from interrupting. I will not take no for an answer. So here I am now, at the bar, sipping my beer and listening to Jesse vent about the argument with his girlfriend. I politely nod, but only listen to every third word, because the focus is escaping me too quickly. I love him like a brother, but help me God with how much he talks. I look around the bar, trying to look casual, but the moment my eyes land on her, there is nothing casual about me. She walks in with her long strawberry blonde hair, gorgeous black dress, and boots easy money. Debbie said that it was lucky for us that the weather would make for fewer people on the roads, less chance we'd be seen. 25 freaking degrees. I do not like the cold. This will be the first time I've ever done anything with Randy. This thing was his idea, I think, but it was Debbie that brought me into it. There's $6,000 to be had, and it sounds like no problem having it, if you don't mind robbing some old lady, which I don't. This weather is awful, though. They're always predicting snow, but we don't usually get any. When we do get it, it's pretty, covering up the trash on the ground, making the town look better than it really is. So, Debbie told me about this, and then has Randy tell me the details. We're planning on tricking this old lady, but they don't really have a handle on how to do it. We're going to tell her they're from the city, tell her they need to look inside her house. Randy looks like a teenager, and Debbie's a girl. They need me to be the man from the city. I told them I had a blue shirt with badges on it. It had belonged to my brother Danny, who's doing time in the state penitentiary, back when he worked for the city. I've got his van, too, and it's plain white like a service vehicle. Debbie was Danny's girlfriend before he got locked up. Now she's Randy's. She ought to be my girlfriend because I'm a lot more like Danny than Randy will ever be. But I get it. Randy is smart, and Debbie wanted somebody who was not like Danny. So, we got this plan. It's Randy's plan, but we're all in on it. I have a gun. It's a gun Uncle Terrell gave me when I was a kid. It's a .22, but it works. Randy said not to bring it, but I really want to have it with me. You can never tell what might go wrong. What if this old lady has a gun? Did he ever think about that? So, I got the shirt and my van. We got what we need. This morning, we went back over what to do. We go to the old lady's house at a little after 12. Traffic in town is busy, but this place is outside of town. It's on a street that zigzags off from the highway toward Atlanta. I drive up in front of the house, parking so that she can see the white van if she looks out the window. I get out and go up to the door with Debbie behind me. Debbie is going to be wearing a big coat, and I'm going to say she's my trainee. First, though, I have to tell the old lady that there's been a problem with her electric bill and that she's being charged too much. The city is sending me to fix it. I'm gonna tell her. She opens the door, because who wouldn't want somebody to fix it so that a bill is lower? And that's when I tell her who Debbie is supposed to be. I'm asking the old lady where the kitchen is, because this problem is probably at the outlet the refrigerator is plugged into. When she starts to take me there, Debbie asks if she can use the bathroom. While I'm in the kitchen, Debbie goes to the old lady's bedroom. Randy says the money is in the bottom drawer of her chest of drawers. I keep the old lady busy till Debbie comes to the kitchen. Then I make like I fixed the problem, and we leave. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. The old lady won't know she's been robbed. The next time she looks for the money and it's gone, she won't think that it might have been the city electric guy. She's old. If she does remember us, she sure as hell won't remember what we looked like. Randy says there's about $6,000 there. I'm like, how do you know? He says the old lady is Dexter Lockwood's granny, and Dexter told him, we gotta give Dexter some of the money. Randy says no, that Dexter is stupid, and just told this without thinking up the plan himself. Randy is staying in the van while Debbie and me go inside. With the weather as cold as it is, it wouldn't be a good idea to turn the thing off and just hope it will start when we get back. It's usually reliable, but in this weather, I don't know. I'm leaving it running with Randy inside, out of sight. And damn, it is snowing. So, I drive a little slower on the way, looking around to see how many cars are out, and since the snow just started, there's quite a few. We get to the house, and it's not what I was expecting. I thought it would be something pretty nice, but it's not. It's a little bit bigger than the shotgun houses in Milltown, but not by much. There's a carport full of junk, and the Plymouth in the driveway looks like it hasn't moved in a while. I asked Randy if he was sure this was the place, and he said that he was. I parked on the street and looked over at Debbie. She's a pretty girl, but the kind of pretty girl that knows she's pretty. The coat she was wearing had a fur collar that she pulled up to cover a good bit of her face. She said, "Here we go. Part 2. Debbie." When Steve pulled up in front of the house, I could tell that he was scared, and it wasn't just because of the snow. He was dim in the head like his brother Dennis, but Dennis wasn't scared of anything. That's why he was locked up. A little bit of scared can be a good thing. It keeps you from being foolish. Randy and I had gone over the plan a good bit before we got Steve involved. He had the shirt and the plain white van. He was too dumb to send in alone. Somebody needed to go with him to be sure he didn't screw it up. While we're going over the plan, Steve started talking about having a gun he wanted to bring with him. Randy said no. A gun would change all of this. We would go from basically pulling a scam to maybe getting charged with assault with a deadly weapon of an old lady. I'm scared that Steve brought it anyhow. So, it's below freezing, and the snow has started to stick. I didn't say anything though. We needed to be focused on what we were doing, because this was $6,000. 2 for each of us. I could last 6 months on $2,000 if I was careful. And I was careful. I'm not mentioning that until we get this done. I want my money, and then I'm done with Randy. and with Steve, and with Dennis. When he stopped the van in front of the house, I could see Steve starting to freak out a little. I didn't want him to spend too much time thinking, so I just looked at him and said, "Here we go." I got out of the van and started around. Randy got in the driver's seat. He went to the door and knocked. The old lady opened it right away, like she had been standing there waiting for us. She's tiny. I mean, I'm only 5'2" myself, but she's shorter than me. A tiny little old lady. "Can I help you?" Steve stutters a little, but manages to say, "We're here about your bill. Has it been too high lately?" "What bill?" she says. "The electric bill," he says. "Has your electric bill been too high?" "It's high," the old woman says, just like any other old woman would have said about any other bill. The old lady is tiny, but she's mad, staring at him right in the eye. "Let me come to your kitchen," Steve says. "I can show you what the problem is." "I need to go to the bathroom," I say, but the old lady doesn't hear me. The old lady looks at me and says, "They got to send 2 of you to look at it?" Steve is in over his head. "Let me come to your kitchen," he says. The old lady's hackles are up big time, and I can see she's not scared. She knows we're trouble, and she's not going to let us in. I say again, "I need to go to the bathroom." "I can show you where the problem is, and I can fix it and save you some money," Steve says, and he sounds desperate saying it. I could see where this was heading. She would slam the door and call the police, and even if we didn't get caught, there wouldn't be any money. That was for damn sure. I shoved past Steve and pushed the old lady backwards. I thought she would fall, but she didn't. She staggered a step, and I was inside. I spun her around and pushed her face first into the sofa. I didn't want her looking at us any more than she already had. I could hear Steve snatching drawers open in the next room. I'm thinking the jerk doesn't remember where the money is. Randy had said specifically that it was in the bottom drawer in a cardboard box under some old nightgowns. Why the hell could he not find it? I hear him cussing then. He comes out and says, "Debbie, you're going to have to come and look for it." I can't find it. Idiot! Names! Now the old lady knew my name at very least. By then he was beside me, leaning into the old woman himself, holding her there. I got up and went to the bedroom and saw that he had ransacked it. The room straight across the hall was a little bathroom. There was one other door still closed. I went to it. I opened the door, expecting to find a different bedroom, the right bedroom, but instead, it's piled high with boxes and crap. Her junk room. "Damn it," I said. I went back to the front room where Steve continued to hold the old lady down. I leaned down to her and said, "Where is your money?" "I don't have any money," she said. Steve started to let her up, and it made me so mad that I slapped his head. He leaned back into her. "You do. We know about it. It's supposed to be in the bottom drawer of your Chester drawers in a box. Now where is it?" She said, "My Christmas money?" "Yeah," I said, wondering if she thought we wouldn't take it if she called it that. "It's gone. I spent it." Now I was mad. How did Randy get such bad information? What the hell were we going to do now? Finally, I said, "You must have started saving up again for next Christmas. Where's that at?" "In my sewing room," she said. I didn't say anything to that. "The sewing room," she said. "I heard you opening doors. I know you went in there." "The room with the boxes?" "Yeah, I keep it in one of the boxes in there." "Which one?" She started describing where it was, but I thought there was no way I was going to go in there and find it, even with her description. There was crap everywhere in that room. "Bring her down here, Jeff," I said, heading down the hall and expecting Steve to understand that I was referring to him. Again, it took 2 beats for him to catch on. He held the old woman by the back of her neck, pushing her in front of him. I pulled my coat up high enough that she couldn't get a good look at my face. When she got inside the room, she went to a stack of boxes and moved them around, finally pulling out one that looked, to me at least, like every other box in the room. She fumbled and opened it as we stood behind her. Part 3. Randy. There was supposed to be $6,000 in the box. If anything, I thought there might be more. I told Debbie about it, hoping she could talk Steve into doing the actual theft. Her idea was better because she knew about the official-looking shirt. I didn't want to deal with Steve. He was stupid. This needed to be simple, not simple-minded. Debbie planned it well. None of us knew how the weather would be that day. The temperature had been around freezing for a few days. Then it dropped into the 20s, and then it started to snow. I thought about calling it off, but I didn't want to lose Steve. You could do this. Debbie had Steve practice everything he was going to say and do. She walked him through it over and over, until we were all bored to death by it. The main thing was to say he was from the city, and that there was a problem with the electricity, and he could fix it and save her money. Once they were inside, the whole thing would take 2 or 3 minutes. I thought the shirt would be enough to make Steve look like a utility worker. It wasn't. He looked like a doofus wearing a work shirt. It was too late for me to say anything to him or Debbie. We were committed to the plan by then. I looked at him and wanted to ask if he had brought his little gun with him, but I didn't. I just wanted to hurry and get this over with. When we got there, Steve is like a raccoon caught in a car's headlights, and I think, damn, we are done for. I thought about pulling the plug, but I didn't. I should have, but I didn't. Debbie came through, getting him out of the van and headed toward the house. I watched them till they got to the door, and I realized how much snow had fallen. Maybe 5 minutes passed before I heard the gunshot. That son of a bitch had brought a gun after I told him not to. He fired again, and I thought, dumb bastard has killed her. I was already out of the van, which I had left running and with the door open, and was running toward the house. I can hear Debbie crying, and I know it's because she just watched that fool kill the old woman. The door pops open and Debbie comes staggering out, doubled over. I grab her shoulders and raise her up. There is a widening red patch at her stomach that I don't want to look at too closely. I put my arm under her and help her to the van. I can't very well drive her to the hospital and explain that our partner accidentally shot her while we were robbing an old lady. And I can't walk away from that situation either, I realize. I opened the side door and laid her down. This is messed up, I said. She didn't say anything back. I ran back to the little house, knowing that neighbors might have heard the gunshots and called the police. I needed to get Steve and the money and get the hell away and figure out what we needed to do about Debbie. I didn't want to see the dead old lady. I didn't. As soon as I got inside, I yelled, "Steve!" There was no answer. I went down the little hall and looked in the bedroom, but no one was there. I started into the junk room, but I fell, slipping in blood on the floor. My feet slid from under me, and I went down hard, banging my head on the floor. Someone spoke my name. I turned my head and saw Steve lying on the floor beside me. Blood throbbed slowly from his neck. He was not dead, but he would be soon. I heard my name again and looked up to see the old woman standing above me, her face filled with anger and sadness. "Randy," she said. Then I saw that she was holding the old Colt pistol that had belonged to my grandfather. I didn't realize she still had it. I should have, but I didn't. "Hey, Grandma," I said, the Heist Connoisseur. I exited the world of Coca-Cola at 2:19 p.m. No sweat, no fear. After all, I've stolen from the greatest museums in the world. That said, my pocket did feel heavier. The one with my phone, which contained a picture of the original Coca-Cola secret formula. Only 2 senior executives know the formula entirely at any given time. It's that secret. Well, now there are 3. I crossed Baker Street onto Centennial Olympic Park. I scanned without appearing to scan and noticed 2 men in black suits. I increased my pace without drawing attention to myself. Could they be from the museum? Surely not. I would have noticed. Over the last 6 weeks, I've patiently cased the famous tourist trap, working as an electrician, my original calling, before becoming the world's most notorious burglar. I prefer Heist Connoisseur, but the FBI won't use it. To them, I'm just an ordinary thief. It's so hard to build one's brand. I stopped and sat on a park bench. The suits looked uncomfortable with my sudden inaction. They slowed but maintained their direction. They were following me. My photographic memory flipped through the museum's security personnel, and those 2 were not there. I got up and walked to them. We were surrounded by kids playing, lovers holding hands, and walkers listening to mumbled headphones. These 2 won't make a scene. I, on the other hand, will. It was easier to disappear in chaos. "I love pizza on mountain roads if it's December," I said, looking in the opposite direction of the startled pair. "What?" one of the suits said. "Come on. You must give the counter-response or I'm out of here." They both squirmed. I couldn't have shocked them more had I stripped down to my tighty-whities and danced. "We don't know what you're talking about." They attempted to move past me, but I intercepted them. "All right, enough games. Why are you following me?" They looked around as if trying to find the hidden candid camera. "Face recognition. We've been sent to verify." "Me? Which notorious criminal do I look like?" "Don Bard." "The Heist Connoisseur?" They tensed up. I tipped my hand. Only the FBI and I know that moniker, even if they pretend they don't. The suits drew their guns. I had already seen 2 police officers standing near a hot dog cart, only a stone's throw from us. I shouted "gun" and pointed at the 2 suits. The police officers reacted quickly. "Put the weapons down!" they shouted with their guns aimed at the men in black. The neckties dropped their guns and raised their hands. In the confusion, I disappeared among several walkers running from the chaos. I never looked back, but I overheard the 2 suits yelling, "We're FBI." I must be slipping. I know better than to allow a Big Brother camera to get a full view of my face. Perhaps I'm getting too old for this. It may be time to retire. They say you should retire at the pinnacle of your career. Is there any higher pinnacle than the Coke formula? The suits and cops should have made peace by now. I doubled back and sat on a bench, never leaving the park. The best place to hide is where you begin. No one ever thinks to look where they lost you. Now that I could sit peacefully, it was time to get the nerd working to sell this picture. "I've got the pic," the nerd texted back. "On it." How much is this adventure worth? Coke's retained earnings are a little shy of $75 billion. Imagine $75 billion. Now imagine $100 million. Both are impossible for the average Joe to wrap his brain around. But I've done the math. 100 million is only 0.133% of Coke's available cash. Not even 1%. My phone vibrated. Coke says they won't pay. not surprised, move on to other buyers. It's a dangerous game Coke is playing. Someone might buy it. If no one does, I'll fling the formula over the web. Nomads in the Arabian Peninsula will make Coke in their tents. 10 minutes later, Musk backed out, Pepsi still on the fence. I once considered stealing the Mona Lisa. Its estimated value is $1 billion. Coke could buy 75 Mona Lisas, but it won't toss me a measly 100 million. Pepsi got cold feet, afraid of repercussions. Plan C? Yes. That took me aback. I have enough plans to go through the alphabet twice, but I believed Pepsi would buy it, if for no other reason than to gift it back to Coke as a goodwill gesture. Imagine the free advertising. And on top of that, Pepsi would be seen as the biggest-hearted corporation of all time. Apple wants it, says they're going to make it better, the nerd texted. I have my standards, no changing what has worked. Number go to plan D. What's wrong with that fruity company? And what's up with the bite out of the apple? Is it Eve's apple? The one that caused the fall of man? Now that I think about it, that is a good logo for them. I put down the phone and took in the beauty. Trees rustling, squirrels nibbling, birds singing. Of course, cars honking, people shouting, runners thudding, and sirens blaring accompanied the otherwise tranquil symphony. Buzz. TikTok made an offer. I may be a thief, but I'm a patriotic thief. No exclamation mark. I was beginning to believe I'd have to follow through on my threat to release the formula on the web. Then my eyes read the text I was hoping to see. Coke called back, says they will pay. I remained unaffected on the outside, but fireworks went off inside. I was about to score my largest heist. Who knew a soft drink formula would bring in more than crown jewels, famous diamonds, and priceless works of art combined? Well, me. But I hate to toot my own horn. Send the picture. No copy. They will know. The nerd texted. My hand was shaking a bit. I pushed send. Oops. It's been over 6 months since my oops. Since then, the 3 who knew the formula have grown to over 8 billion. Coke attempted a campaign to impugn the release as a hoax. However, it failed after people started to taste the formula's results. I left Atlanta for a mountainous area where there are no Big Brother cameras. My piddly few million will have to suffice for my retired years. How could I continue heisting after such a bumbling mistake? I have to face it, I'm no longer fit to be the Heist Connoisseur. Psst, Jill killed Jack. I very much need some socks, pretty please, with sugar on top. This was the text that I sent to my estranged ex-wife, the one who wanted to drag me out to the wilderness under the guise of talking about financing our first child's entrance into college. I knew that she was old-fashioned and wanted to push me from the hill, just like Fellini. So my last request was not very sinister. I mean, even death row inmates should get some free laundry or a meal. Maybe even a prayer. I looked into the pantry of my rental and decided there was no good food. Bachelor food is disgusting when you leave it in the fridge for a week. I needed my dog. Hey, can we bring the dog? I knew that Caspian hated hiking just as much as me. It was like walking without purpose, like smelling flowers just to get allergies. I also knew that if Michelle threw me over a cliff and I was able to not immediately die, then Caspian the owner could theoretically pull me up with a rope. I decided to wear my flax Bermuda-styled shorts, which can be unwoven and turned into rope or a joint. She did not immediately text back and scold me for overpacking. This was a good sign because I had previously said I would find some kind of therapy. She wanted a stranger to break my will, make me cry, pay for the breaking, and send me back all trained. Also, I had a very large life insurance policy at the time. Husband therapy is kind of like dog training, but the wife forgets that she has to remember the commands, or the husband will forget, and the 2 weeks and $1,500 in Idaho won't take. She has to reinforce the electric shock therapy, the way the husband therapist swings a hand like windshield wipers and asks if my mother ever touched me inappropriately. It was just 38 minutes before the murder. Hike. In Nights of Calabria, Fellini taught us that a kind whore will get many marriage proposals, walk up to the mountain of love with all her savings, and get thrown over the mountain by her fake fiancé. I decided to pack like Fellini. I went up to my rented room and looked for all the things that could be lugged in a hefty garbage bag suitcase. There was the square bottle with a ship that my grandfather had constructed with tweezers. Nah, he's dead. There were piles of clothes on the ground. These kept me from bringing a drunk woman home. No one wants to make love next to dirty laundry. That's pretty gross if they do. I saw pictures of my kids when they were young and realized they were getting old, going to college, all taking medications to avoid giving me grandkids. I looked at the pillows. They were stiff, so I used them only to prop up a cell phone to watch Italian movies. It was better to pillow on a wad of sweaters and save the neck. I went into the closet and found my mafia money. It was just an envelope from the bank full of cash because I hate wasteful tipping. For some reason, the kids at the register have a very difficult time begging for tips of cash when they only punched in buttons. They do not have this problems with cards because they say, please follow the instructions on the screen when they ask for 30%, 40. One of the cashiers actually said my card was declined because he hit the 50% tip option for me. I use cash so the kids can beg like adults. There is no need for great cash when your former estranged spouse wants to go hiking in the wilderness. Also, I think she is bitter because of the dating. She pretends she doesn't mind that much, but always gets me drunk and asks for details. I don't know what I tell her half the time. I see a bottle of Canadian Mist, whiskey, that was purchased for toothaches and bladder infections. It is not a very good bottle of whiskey, but it is lightweight since half of it is missing. It is best to be slightly inebriated before being thrown off a cliff. Also, the fall hurts less. I packed the whiskey. Now my closet is executive clean. I have 10 handkerchiefs laid out in case one of the kids gets married. Handkerchiefs are the required minimum for a gentleman of the ages. You can offer the spare to a woman in tears. You can use the linen to avoid touching bathroom knobs. It makes a wonderful mask in the case of desperate last-minute need for larceny. I love handkerchiefs. I packed 10 in the garbage bag, knowing that large puncture wounds should be full of gauze. For this reason, I had to return the silk hankies. It is better for the absorbent cotton in case of a fall. What else? It was a tiny room with windows facing the main road in town. The firemen and police went up and down the road trying to find an entrance to Starbucks. They put in a one-way driveway to be tricky. I had some bills on my desk, but I didn't want to bring these to the afterlife. I decided to quickly pay for my parking bill because I didn't want my extra truck to get towed if I should be in the community hospital for very long. I said a small, "Thank you, God," because 2 of our 3 nurses had wanted to date, but you should never date medical people in a small town. Amputations happen when you are not a gentleman. What else? Sheets? Number comforter for comfort? Number Michelle had felt bad that I was cold without her cuddles and bought a comforter matching certain parts of her body. Peach. It was definitely a distraction if ever a gentleman has lady company. A man should have his bed colored in very serious colors, perhaps gray and black, and I needed a multi-tool. A multi-tool is the American version of a Swiss Army knife. It is neither a knife nor from the Swiss. Our multi-tools should be from Leatherman because they have pliers and blades, which do not fold back on fingers. They have finger locks. Unfortunately, I had the Lowe's knockoff multi-tool, which had already severed half of a finger. A nurse, who I did not date, stitched it back on with some weird thread that was supposed to dissolve. She kept sticking that fishhook needle and whispering, "Does it hurt? Does that hurt? What if I do this?" I didn't go back to remove the stitches, which didn't shrink or get dissolved. The nerve was actually clipped by the fake multi-tool, and I can feel the rain coming 5 days before the weatherman now. I put the multi-tool in the garbage bag with the whiskey and the handkerchiefs. 22 minutes. Now, in the smallest case that Michelle actually wanted to talk about paying for our kids' college and not throw me over the cliff, I was prepared to bring a checkbook. I would argue that the check should be endorsed to the child herself. Michelle would argue that kids might spend all the money drinking and whoring like their father. I resented that comment because our town didn't actually have any real prostitutes. In order to avoid the impasse of how the child will spend the money for education, Michelle would push me over the cliff, wait 6 weeks, and get my life insurance. She didn't like long and sustained arguments because she was taking yoga. I decided to bring my checkbook and not transfer any money into the account. What would they say? "We're sorry. He has the money in a money market, but we cannot legally transfer this money to you. Is he around?" Then she would feel really silly about kicking the goose over the glade. It is important for husbands and fathers to always be useful. Do not teach them how to start a BBQ grill. They will inevitably become vegans and hire a gardener. They will keep the seat down and the toothpaste caps fully engaged. The planned obsolescence of a man starts with money. Try to get your spouse fired. In my case, this was not possible. She worked for the state. So after so many decades, the man is not necessary. He must be thrown from the hill under the guise of good health. His dog may or may not follow, depending if the man fed the dog in the last few months. Dogs are ultimately loyal to the person who puts kibble in the bowl. It is nothing personal. 16 minutes till death. The waning sun reminded me, you could throw her down the hill. Wow, I never considered murder for life, insurance, or love. I never considered her last words. Would she fall down the hill and say, "I was just kid, ding"? Wow, this was huge. It didn't seem very noble to throw a former wife down a hill. I don't know what was going on with Jack and Jill, but I bet it wasn't his idea to get any water. Notice that Jack broke his crown, head, long before Jill slipped on the murder weapon. Moral: do not go up hills for water. Water likes to be lower due to gravity. I knew that a former spouse did not really care about my good health, never dying due to exercise, but I also felt she would bring me some socks out of duty. She is prideful like that. She wants her man to die with clean socks because a coroner will look for the meaning of death and should not be confused by bad odors, nor have to cut the socks off the body. They get stiff with grime. Also, 11 minutes. I really wanted to get some veneers before death. It seems really creepy to have a perfect white smile in death, but hide the blemishes with a beard in life. The coffee struggle had taken its toll. I had never heard of anyone suing Starbucks for their loss of white. How would you even quantify the loss? You Honor, I was going to get a new hot wife, but I couldn't smile due to Starbucks stains. How much did that cost you, Mr. Go-Round? The lady from San Jose had stock options of Oracle. She's probably a billionaire. I lost this opportunity because of Starbucks stains. I would never smile. Can you show me your receipts? No, Honor. I paid in cash to avoid needless tipping. How do we know you didn't stain your teeth from Pete's coffee? Pete's roast gives me heartburn. Can you prove this heartburn? Ouch. It was going to be just like the cigarette debacle. If you smoke one Marlboro in your life, you cannot blame Camels for your cancer. Tobacco manufacturers know this and promote community smoking to destroy the single source theory. 7 minutes. In my last 7 minutes of life, before Michelle brought the dog in the Prius, before the socks were delivered, and she had a large aluminum canister of water filled with melatonin to knock me out at the summit. She knows I get sleepy near the summit. Contrary to popular notions, St. Bernards and their cousin dog, the Bernese mountain dog, do not actually have smelling salts in their saliva glands. They cannot lick you to consciousness. They usually have less than a tankard of whiskey around their neck, because the whiskey is meant to fortify the dog in bad weather. Some share, that is true. But mostly the large dog will watch you falling into snoring, as the Michelle commands that he uses his large head to push his former master over the hill. The dog will think it is just a game since his eyes are poor on telescopic visions. He cannot tell if the cliff is a few feet or a few leagues. He will actually get excited to be playing a lazy game where he doesn't have to fetch and get sweaty. My poor dumb dog will be an accomplice to murder. No, if not for my own sake, I must think of California law, how they will eventually kill Caspian because he was a man killer. The law does not care if it was his idea or the woman. He will be taken to the Black Ops section of the SPCA and ethically sent to heaven. They are very moral about these things, and overcrowding is at an all-time high. Please remember to spray and neuter your pet to avoid euthanasia. My body? I need something reflective for the Air Force. She will probably bring me to Fort Ord to hike. They are an inactive Army base. This is why we need the Air Force to gather my remains. 1 minute. What the hell can they see from outer space? I decided to wrap myself in Mylar. I would go out looking like a Chinese spy balloon. Someone would find this story and know. It wasn't the dog's fault after all. I will try to come back to edit this. She just arrived with a Prius. The dog looks hungry. The thumping. The museum's intercom crackled on with train station static. Hello, Norville Museum. I ducked at the sound, trying to escape it, cracking my eardrums. He spoke fast, like a sports announcer, at the most critical part of the game. Welcome to your nightly broadcast from your favorite night guard. As always, we must get the boring things out of the way before we have some fun. His voice trailed up and down with the meter of a radio host. It was well practiced. If there is any other human in this fine establishment other than your Steve and Linda, remember, you are stuffed. If there is anyone else here, you will be arrested, and you could be charged with robbery as you are on the premises 30 minutes after closing. He sounded way too excited for his long night shift. So, if there are any other living souls in this building, we get to start my favorite game. Hide and go, speak. I'll count to 30, and then the game starts. Have fun. I could hear the big generators for each light system shutting off, their cranks getting closer each time until the painting in front of me darkened. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light of the exit sign, his words started to set in my head. You will be arrested. I couldn't be arrested, not again, and especially not with robbery charges. Over the still air, a whistle was carried from deep within the museum. It tickled my ears with its swinging tune. With the lightest footsteps I could make, I reached the exit sign. Touching the cold metal made my hair stand on end. as I gently pressed on the long bar until a loud click crashed through the room like a cymbal. The whistling stopped, and the silence became much louder. I looked around frantically, removing some of my precious light as my hair whipped around my face. If I was caught, I would have to look into my mother's eyes as she said, "I wouldn't be surprised if she did this, Judge." I couldn't hear that again. My eyes caught a big pot in the middle of the room. It was decorated with strips and little dancing people moving across the two-dimensional plane. As carefully as possible, I opened the lid and slipped my first leg into it. My footsteps sounded like a gong as I put my second in and slipped my body past the hole into the pot. Once the lid was over my head, I was in total darkness. Not even putting my hand in front of my face would give my eyes information. My breathing sounded like it was through a megaphone as it rose up and down, breathing in the clay, which was probably hundreds of years old. I tried to close my eyes, even though it changed nothing, and think about something other than where I was. The more I thought, the more my breathing sounded like it was coming from a tornado. My wind created gale force winds faster as I felt water drip onto my folded knees. My mind raced almost as fast. The thumping started to grow louder. At first, I thought it was from outside that he had found me. It kept getting faster, like he was running in place right outside my pot, teasing me with the promise of captivity, playing with me, just like his stupid voice played up and down like a carousel. I put a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. Thump, 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 thump. Over and over, like an incessant heartbeat, his feet went up and down and up and down. For minutes, his feet went on, just right outside my pot. The drips on my knees were getting bigger and more frequent, adding another sound to my existence. At any moment, he could just open the lid and get this all over with, but he was choosing to mess with me. Thump drip, thump drip. Over and over, faster and faster. I couldn't control my breath, and what did it matter if he was going to torment me? He knew I was there. All he had to do was open the lid and let the red light in. Let it flood in and wash over my face like a river, rinse away the guilt for just a brief moment. Instead, he chose to mess with me. He chose to step and step just outside my reach. I could barely control myself. I started to rock back and forth, and with me, the pot. Thump, drip, clang. Thump, drip, clang. I couldn't do it again. I didn't want to do it again. But when if he opened that lid, I would have to. He deserved it for stepping over and over. His never ending. Thump, thump, thump. My legs started to tingle with anticipation. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. My breath got faster as I stared at where I guessed the lid was. My pot rocked back and forth with me, getting ready for his fly-like hands to lift the lid. That's all he was, just a disgusting fly, but all he did was thump, thump, thump. I felt even more adrenaline burst through me as the rocking got faster, my breath got faster, and his shoes got faster. I have to. He'll get me if I don't. I have to. Rung through my head as the thump, thump, drip, thump, thump, clang rang on. A new sound sounded as a voice called out from the other side of the pot's walls. "Hey!" Another shot of adrenaline cracked open like lightning, and I could feel my legs practically vibrating from the sound. The thumping from his shoes meeting the hardwood floor, my breath at record-breaking speeds, the rocking only being contained by my leans, and drip dripping that reminded my legs to be ready. I want to do it again. I leaped out of the pot before his hand touched it. My head was buzzing with sounds, screams, thumps, tears, and then more screaming. Sounds of teeth on flesh and nails on muscle rang out throughout the silent museum like the most beautiful symphony. Thumps of bodies slamming on the ground, drips of ruby blood, and winds cut from hands swatting me away. I had done it again, and yet it did not go. Thump, 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 the boy with frozen wings. "You have my attention," says the Grand Assassin. "Who?" "He." The boy drops his gaze to the Varos gold coin on the tavern's backroom table, his guarantee of safe audience, then looks back up at the man. The Grand Assassin's wrinkles and white hair may or may not be real, but the eyes are. Pinprick pupils caught in still water stare back at the boy. I can't say it. "Have you heard the story of the little bird with the frozen wings?" The Grand Assassin asks. "Are there two birds and a stone in it?" "No, lad. It's the one about the bird flying south for the winter. The air is so cold that his wings turn to ice and he falls into a meadow. Do you know what happens to this bird?" The boy shakes his head, platinum hair peeking out despite his hood's concealing efforts. A cow comes by and drops some dung on the frozen bird, and in this steaming pile of crap, the bird's wings begin to thaw. He's ready to fly again, but now he's stuck. So, he chirps for help. The boy watches the Grand Assassin's bare hand hover over the Varos coin as the man whistles a plaintive tune that ends in a soft squawk. Finally, a passing cat hears the bird's cry and comes over to investigate. It digs the bird free, cleans him in the grass, and eats him. "What does it mean?" asks the boy, willing the Grand Assassin to touch the gold coin. First, not everyone who shits on you is your enemy. Second, if you're in deep shit, it's best to keep your mouth shut. But most importantly, it means that not everyone who gets you out of shit is your friend. So do you want my help? Yes. The boy throws off his hood and says the name of the Crown Prince. The Grand Assassin's hand drops under the weight of that name. His fingers touch the Varos coin on the table, and some reptilian part of his mind notes that the coin is slick, oily even. But his higher consciousness is focused on the face before him. He is staring at the Crown Prince's exact likeness. Yes, I'm his decoy. The boy pauses, hoping the man will fill in the rest. But I don't have to be. The Grand Assassin sucks in his breath once he realizes the lookalike's audacity. Steal the life of the Crown Prince, then slip in to take his place. Can he do it? How will you explain his missing decoy then? "Fire," the boy says, matter-of-factly. The man opens his mouth, then closes it again. He's used to watching men squirm in the wake of what's left unsaid, but this boy makes him feel like the talkative one. He watches the boy for any sign of uncertainty, but all he gets in return is a polite blank stare. Finally, he slides the coin of Varos into his leather purse. As an afterthought, he wipes his oily fingers on his jerkin. Then, the boy tells him when and where. Their audience concluded, the boy pulls up his hood and leaves the tavern's back room. He weaves through day drunks, then through the city Azamal's maze of alleyways. He stops at a bustling marketplace and takes in his surroundings. He doesn't think the Grand Assassin has changed his mind and decided to follow now that their safe audience is over. No, the man thinks himself a cat poised above the future king. Still, a diversion wouldn't hurt. He listens to the different voices, then joins the crowd. "There's a pretty lass," he says in a baritone voice, and pinches a fishwife's arse on his way past. The fishwife accosts a nearby man who's speaking in that same baritone voice to his friends. The man stumbles against a cloth merchant's stall. Thief! Stop, thief! The boy cries in the bewildered shopkeeper's own voice. Then, he nabs a new cloak to throw over his own as he melts away into the pandemonium. Along the way, he tears off the tainted gloves that he used to touch the Varos coin. Back in the castle confines, the boy is in another back room of sorts, a half-remembered guard tower. There's nothing to guard here because this edge of the castle wall ends on a cliff, a chasm forged centuries ago when the gods threw Varos down from on high. The inside is lined with scrolls and manuscripts bound between boards. This is the record keeper's domain. The record keeper lost his tongue for some long ago unspoken crime. From the way the man walks, the boy knows that was not all that has been cut from him. The crown prince never comes here because he is a cow whose bovine brow cannot bear the burden of reading. But the boy loves the record keeper. He is his greatest friend, his greatest teacher, the one who showed him the scrolls on poisons long forgotten. At first, the boy thought poison alone would be his answer, but the best one, Arya's kiss, takes time to act. There would be no guarantee he'd be positioned to take the crown prince's place unnoticed once the kiss called him home. Silent but ever listening, the record keeper had shown the boy a manuscript on Varos and his assassin cult. Yes, the coin, the grand assassin, it's all coming together, but there's still time to talk yet. The boy and the record keeper have their own way of speaking. The boy blasts through his repertoire of voices while pausing to listen to the tongueless man's eyes. They sit now facing each other with an imaginary coin in between them. Have you heard the story of the little bird with the frozen wings? The boy asks in a perfect imitation of the grand assassin. The record keeper's eyes brim over with pride, with adoration for the protege who gives him voice. Late in the night, he will bar the servants' quarters and start a fire. There will always be more servants, and no one will count bones to make sure the crown prince's decoy is among the last lot. For now, he watches as the boy climbs the crumbling guard tower, then jumps to the nearby hemlock tree. The boy balances on the end of a branch, then he's over the castle wall. The record keeper says a silent prayer that the boy will return, riding the crown prince's horse. Deep within the hardwood forest, the boy waits at the appointed spot. He cannot see the grand assassin, but he can hear horses in the distance. The crown prince is fox hunting with his retinue, an outing among sycophants. The boy shouts out a fox's warning call, a vixen's scream to draw the dogs. He throws his voice and steps behind a tree as the foxhounds bumble past him. The crown prince, whose horse is by far the fastest and whose friends dare not outpace him, is close behind with no other riders in sight. Something detaches itself from the undergrowth, and the crown prince falls from his saddle. He has time to low once in pain before the thing is on him. The now never king jerks, once then falls silent. The grand assassin is caked in mud. Only his still-water eyes are recognizable. They watch as the boy pulls off the crown prince's pinky ring. A knife touches the boy's throat. The grand assassin is saying something, but his words are cut short by the sound of approaching hooves. The knife vanishes. So does the crown prince's body, as the grand assassin pulls his prey into the undergrowth. With feline grace, the boy hops onto the crown prince's horse and turns to meet his retinue. Later that night, as fire burns away the memory of the decoy, the grand assassin will stare at the night sky. The stars will shimmer and merge into one bright light as the numbness in his fingertips creeps up his arm and seeps into his heart. That will be Arya's kiss, courtesy of Varos's coin, calling him home. The grand assassin won't curse the new crown prince, the future king who would have owed him everything. No, he'll be too busy staring at the sky and trying to take flight. As for his words cut short in the woods, the new crown prince remembers them perfectly. Remember this moment, and you will. And what will the boy of many voices with only the tongueless to know his secret do? Well, some things are better left unsaid. Diary of a serial killer. How might one endure the silent and secluded nature of winter? Be the bear, enter a deep cave and dream, dream, dream. Jacqueline Suskin. I probably shouldn't be writing this, but oh fucking well. When the most precious thing lodged in your heart is ripped out and crushed by an unthinking alcoholic asshole driving with a revoked license, you do things, unimaginable things, and not just burying your beloved 8-year-old son, which was not on my shitty life bingo card, OBVs. But life wasn't shitty before. The word should be capitalized, before. No, better yet, the before. Because now, life was rent in two, forever separated by the gaping maw of rage. The before and the after. A fissure of overwhelming grief that quickly cracked, allowing the steaming, boiling lava to emerge from her core. Oh, he would pay, that drunken dickhead. His money won't protect him, not from me. They gave her the codename Mama Bear, but he never imagined that she was holed up in a cave. On a hunch, he came out to the Pennsylvania woods at night, alone. Common sense, and the FBI handbook, would label his actions reckless at best and suicidal at worst. But he didn't fear for his safety. Mama Bear targeted a certain type of prey. Except for being a male, he didn't fit her profile. Funny, they were both profilers. October snuck up behind him, picking up the crisp air, tossing it around. Playing offense, it switched tactics, threw it toward his face, temporarily snatching his breath. He continued to climb, quiet, crunching under his boots, allowing the patches of clearing and the light of the frosted full moon to guide his steps. He'd reach the cave no matter what, so the easy way was the best way. He put his hand in his front pocket, felt the crumpled page of a diary. The paper crinkled like the fallen leaves underfoot. It was mailed to him at his office. This one, and the other entries. He had the sense to turn in the others, but not this one. Well, most of the others. She vowed to herself that she would abstain from killing for a month, or so she wrote. By his accounts, it was day 30. He hoped her undated entry referred to October. At least he would have a day. One day. It was easier than I thought. I would say too easy. But that motherfucker mowed down my baby like a shirtless, beer-bellied jagoff hurrying to cut the grass before the Buccos game. Maybe it shouldn't be hard. Justice shouldn't be hard. Not in the semblance of a fair world. Leaves skittered and scurried around his legs, tumbling over each other like playing squirrels. He stopped, inhaled deeply. He loved the smell of fall, that last exhale of trees mixing with ripe decomposition. I'm so glad I live in a world of Octobers. He smiled at the memory of his sister quoting Anne Shirley, not so long ago. His smile fell. Not so long ago, yet forever ago. Tragedy has a way of altering time, elongating some parts and compressing others. He looked up through the lattice of bare limbs, a web of gnarled fingers, the indigo sky stitched with rhinestones. Did the stars foretell it? It was the mutable signs of the zodiac: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, BTK, Dahmer, Bundy. The ones born at the end of a season, not in the middle, like the fixed signs, like Scorpio, like her. You'd think one was enough, but it wasn't. I realized AA was just one of many. Sure, I settled my score, but what of the other moms? South many, blights, diseases walking the earth, infecting others with their cruelty, their carelessness, their capriciousness. Someone had to bring order, just like Melville Dewey did to book classification. 000 to 999. He considered turning around to walk back down the hill. He turned, but didn't move. In the distance, the twinkling lights of downtown Pittsburgh weaved a terrestrial constellation of bridges, one-way traffic, and sundry skyscrapers. The Steel City, just like its people, metal backbones, gritty guts, and honest hearts. He craved a sandwich from Primanti's. Any sandwich. That was the last time he saw her. At Primanti's, the original one. He wasn't one to second-guess himself. His mom drummed it into their heads from the cradle. Trust self first, last, and only. First, last, only. Thanks to the internet and social media, it's not hard to find someone or their misdeeds. What was once relegated to a diary like this is now vomited onto Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for all to see. Many lap it up, probably because it makes them feel less uncomfortable about their own stupid decisions and meaningless lives. Here for the mindless braggart. Many blowhards make for less research when it comes to this side gig. He cracked his neck, onward and upward, one foot in front of the other, crunching leaves, whipping wind, snapping twigs. Up, he climbed. He was getting close. His hand reached towards his front pocket. Again. He read the page dozens of times, just like the rest. He couldn't help it. Just touching the deckle-edged diary page brought clarity and understanding. He had to find her first. Could it be that easy? I think this might be my last entry. I knew it was a bad idea. No, make that bad idea. To write things down. But writers write. Fish swim. Birds fly. Dogs bark. Writers write. And mama bears? Well, unless you're bent from birth, looking at you, mutable signs, no one sets out to be a killer. Or, as I like to differentiate, a remover. Scrooge, or Dickens, had it partly right. Decrease the surplus population. He just needed to add of assholes. Decrease the surplus population of assholes. Dangerous, foul, hollow assholes. He neared the ridge. He was getting close. He pulled out the wrinkled diary page. He couldn't help it. The moon illuminated the page, but he couldn't make out the words. Strange glyphs, occultic squiggles, just like those found on the astrological charts she used to interpret. Meaningless symbols to the untrained eye, but metaphysical gold to the mystic. He didn't need to be able to read the entry. He had it memorized. The cave. He could see the entrance. Dark, yawning, an inky maw, just like her rage. He reached into the other pocket for his flashlight. She beat him to it. Her flashlight shone on the ground ahead so as not to blind him. Hey sis. Hey bro. What took you so long? Not Mary. The unnerving chorus of cutlery scraping porcelain echoed throughout the room. Tension hung thick in the air, palpable enough to reach up and slice into it with my steak knife. Beside me, my sister sniffed. From my periphery, I could see her red-rimmed eyes staring blankly at her untouched plate. I cut into the slab before me, crimson juices forming a greasy puddle. I took a bite, relished the tenderness. The peas encroached into the sea of mashed potatoes like invading soldiers. "Would you please pass the potatoes, Mary?" Mother asked from the other end of the table. I nodded, heaving the dish over to my sister to pass on. Her gaze remained fixed on her plate as she sat on both hands, legs trembling. A small, choked sob escaped from her lips. "That's quite enough, Leah," Father growled, stabbing into his own steak. Leah shakily grasped the bowl, ushering it to Mother. Between them sat Jonah, barely peeking over the edge of the table and pushing his food about. At the tender age of 5, he was blissfully ignorant. I chewed a bit of gristle in the next bite, watching Father's brow furrow as he took a sip of wine, a rogue tendril staining his snowy beard burgundy. He cleared his throat, an action which rendered the table still, waiting with bated breath. Children, the ultimate test is almost upon us. I hated the way he spoke, like that of an old novel. Mother rested a bony hand over his and listened intently. With her other hand, she fingered the gold cross hanging from her neck. "We will not let the enemy destroy our union. We will not succumb to their devilish tendencies, for they are blind to the ways in which we serve him. They will never know such unwavering love and loyalty, and for that, I pity them." Mother nodded in understanding, her silvery bun bobbing. Father tossed his napkin over his plate and stood, chair screeching dully on concrete. We watched as he climbed the nearby staircase. Stray spots of maroon that had earlier leached into the wood marked his steps, evidence of what he'd done to protect the sanctity of his family. There was once a time when I would have chased after him, lunging for the open door, yearning for sunlight, but the scar on the back of my head itched like an ugly deterrent. I made it a point to constantly remind myself of who I was, where I came from. Fragments of memories, the way my mother used to rub my back in the morning when she woke me for school, the sound of my father's work shoes on the hardwood floors every evening, the hum of the fish tank in my childhood bedroom remained filed away in the depths of my mind, growing fuzzier with each passing day. But I dared not speak of these memories. They were mine and only mine. Leah, now gangly and naive in the throes of adolescence, was more pliable. I imagined she couldn't even recall things like the details of her mother's face or the way it felt to ride a school bus. When Mother and Father told her something, she accepted it at face value. And Jonah, in all his cherubic innocence, had never known another life. The harsh fluorescents were his sun and moon, every day the same. Sometimes it made me want to weep, but then I reminded myself he knew no different. Perhaps it was better that way. Father's thunderous descent broke my thoughts. Mother stood at his approach, collecting some of the equipment he came bearing. As he laid a piece before each of us, the breath caught in my throat. My eyes followed the transition from dark metal into laminated wood that led down to an unmistakable component, a trigger. Out of the children, only I knew how to operate a gun. When I was 8 years old, my father took me hunting for the first time. I recalled the way the cold seeped into my fingers and toes as we waited for hours. We flinched at any flicker of movement, which often turned out to be a rummaging squirrel. But then he arrived. Statuesque and bristled, his sinewy figure strutted into the open field, unaware of his armed audience. His antlers were a thorny crown that dipped with him as he scoured the earth. "Take the shot," my father egged, helping me hold the heavy rifle. We'd gone over the process an umpteen amount of times, but now the steely grip felt wrong. I dropped my shoulder, finger slipping from the trigger as the barrel slung towards the ceiling of the tree stand, and my father cursed. That was the first time my father swore in front of me. In one swift motion, he grabbed the gun, took aim, and fired. I covered my ears and watched in silent horror as the creature's body quivered with the impact. His legs buckled, and he scrambled for a brief moment before taking off, blood spilling from his flank. My father took my shoulders in his hands and leaned square before me. "You don't ever let the gun drop like that, especially with the safety off," he scolded. Hot tears coursed down my cheeks, stinging the wind-chapped skin. My father profusely apologized for swearing and raising his voice, wrapping me in a hug. But I wasn't crying because he yelled. I kept replaying the look of sheer panic as the bullet ripped through the deer's flesh, the terror and confusion he must have felt. We trailed our victim for a short while, following the blood-stained leaves of early winter. He didn't make it far, having collapsed in a small clearing. Panting laboriously, his onyx eyes stared up in blank defeat, and I saw myself in their reflection. Before I could process the scene, another shot rang out, and the deer stilled. A kill shot, my father explained, to end his suffering. "When you see the enemy, you take the shot," Father said then, breaking my trance. I was back in my chair, staring down at the weapon before me. Leah ran a trembling finger over the safety, ensuring it was on per Father's crash course. Jonah, too small to wield such a device, was given a knife instead. Never before had we been permitted to use any kind of weaponry. Anything more than a butter knife was forbidden. Father and Mother claimed it was for our own safety, but I knew better. And that didn't stop me from fantasizing a ballpoint pen embedded in a windpipe, a broken bedpost as a club to the head. I'd had my fair share of time to ponder the possibilities. Leah and Jonah may have been taken at malleable ages, but I refused to fully yield. The slight quiver in Father's hands and the way Mother's complexion paled meant it was all hands on deck. Though I didn't know whose blood painted the staircase, sticky on the soles of Father's shoes, it had led us to such a cataclysm that I dared to dream about life beyond the concrete. I yearned to return to a world where my name was my own, not the one I'd been forced to adopt. I longed to hug my mother and father, to bask in the sunlight on a summer day, to see my friends, to witness the light at the end of a nearly decade-long tunnel. Could this be the end? The gun metal was cool in my clammy palms. I contemplated aiming it at Father or at Mother. It would be so easy. But what if it wasn't loaded? What if it was just for show? And could I really do it? "Let us go," Father commanded, leading our ragtag troop up the stairs. At the top, Father unlatched the door, leading us into an empty hall with another door at its opposing end. Bringing up the rear, I glanced back into the abyss where time passed indefinitely, and as the next door opened into a moonlit room, I realized I would never allow myself to return. Gilded crosses glinted from every wall as we wound through the house, and like something from a movie, a muffled voice seeped in through the cracks in the windows and doors. "Come out with your hands up." "Father?" Leah croaked. "Who is that?" Father ignored her, the click of his safety flipping off. He slung the gun around his back, nodding at Mother as he approached the door. The rush of blood thrummed in my ears. Leah mimicked Father and switched her safety off, and Mother did the same. Greasy coils of nausea knotted my gut as I followed their lead. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Nothing about the unfolding situation felt good or right or godly. Father gripped the doorknob with a fierceness and turned. Golden porch light flooded the entryway. For a moment, Father's face looked younger in the warm glow, and I wondered what led him to this path in life. Slowly, he raised his hands above his head and stepped outside. "Drop your weapon!" an extraneous voice shouted. "It's over, Arthur," another called. "Do the right thing and drop your weapon." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Father replied simply, as if he were declining an invitation to a party. "Your godlessness is a stain on this earth, and I have to protect my family from such evil. I can't let you destroy the Lord's work. You think you can interfere with his plan?" Disconcerted grumbles echoed as a reply. "Dear?" Father called. Mother, gun cradled in her arms, crept to his side. Her skin was sallow, brow damp with prickles of sweat. The woman, always so composed, seemed to be cracking. "Mrs. Goodfellow, drop your weapon now," the second voice commanded. Tensions heightened with each passing second. "Put down your weapon and put your hands up." Negotiations persisted, but I knew Mother was as stubborn as a mule and loyal as a dog. She would follow Father to the ends of the earth. The crunch of boots on gravel drew near. Father stiffened. "Not another step," he threatened, raising his gun. "Don't turn this into a standoff, Arthur," the voice urged. "That's not going to do either of us any good." A treacherous moment of silence ticked by. Every part of me trembled. "I will not let you tear this family apart," Father declared coldly. "Maud," he said, nodding at Mother, who lifted her gun. Her finger made contact with the trigger, and she pulled. A deafening blast ripped through the cool night air, and all hell broke loose. Shouts of anger and bewilderment erupted, and I watched as Mother's body lurched back in a swarm of bullets. In collapsing, her gun fired. I fell to the floor, covering the important parts of myself. Father crawled lamely over the threshold, dragging Mother's body with him. With a weak kick, he shut and locked the door. Blood from their matching wounds seeped into the floor, a crimson trail smeared behind them. Amidst the chaos, Father tenderly brushed stray hairs from Mother's face. He caressed her cheek in his calloused hand as she gasped for air, her blouse soaked through and the cross dangling from her neck now stained. Faint whispers of prayer spilled from his lips as he continued to comfort Mother. Barked orders swirled beyond the window panes, the thud of boots heavy on the porch. From the floor, I glanced around. Jonah was nowhere to be found. "Jonah?" I called quietly. "Leah, Jonah's not." I turned. Leah lay face down nearby, arms splayed by her sides and gun resting under the nearby sofa. "Leah?" On shaking limbs, I clawed my way over to her. Terror gripped my throat so viciously I struggled to breathe. Thick locks of brunette cascaded into the floor, shielding her face from view. I carefully grabbed her shoulder, rolling her over. A strangled cry escaped me as I recoiled at the sight. Blood trickled from her forehead down the bridge of her nose between lifeless eyes. The bile that earlier threatened to purge itself did so then. I wiped my mouth, one last dry heave racking my body, before curling up beside Leah. Garbled whispers across the room caught my attention, and I looked to see Father lying beside Mother, gazing up at the ceiling of the foyer. Though worse for wear, he still managed to recite the Lord's Prayer unfalteringly. Mother remained limp, devoid of life. "Mary?" Father called blindly, like a sick game of Marco Polo. "Mary, child, are you still there?" I rose, stepping gingerly until I stood over top of him. His snowy beard, once stained with wine, was now marred with fatal streaks of maroon. She's dead, I said solemnly. Leah's dead. I didn't want to reveal that Mother's gun misfiring was the cause. I wanted him to think it was his fault, which, truthfully, it was. Everything was his fault. Sometimes, we as servants of the Lord must make the ultimate sacrifice. Shut up, I hissed, jabbing the barrel of my gun into his forehead. Father grew silent for a moment. Mary, you are a daughter of the one true King, he rasped. You are our last hope at ending the war of evil that has been waged against us. When you see the enemy, take the shot. I sniffed. You're right, Father. His breathing was ragged, blood curdling in his lungs as we spoke. A twinge of sorrow panged my heart as I gazed down at the dying man before me. But then I remembered all the hurt he'd inflicted, all the years he'd stolen, and anger sizzled in my veins. Realization flashed across his face. Mary. A single blast rang out, a kill shot to end his suffering. The footsteps and chatter outside ceased. For a moment, the world was silent. My name's not Mary, I spat, dropping the gun. With a quick yank, I tore the gold cross from my neck, dropping it onto Father's still chest. A muffled cry emanated from somewhere close by. My heart clenched. Jonah, I called, wheeling around in search of the noise. I padded across the living room to the pantry where the cries seemed to stem from. Carefully, I turned the knob and opened the door. Head buried between his knees, Jonah sat curled in a ball. Jonah. I rubbed his back, and he glanced up. His eyes shone with tears. Jonah, it's okay. I'm here. Just as the front door splintered open under the crack of a boot, I wrapped him in a hug. Fall Family Feud. Local missing children discovered in police raid after officer slain. Abducted children found in home of local religious leaders. My name's not Mary. Young woman's fight for survival in House of Horrors.